pin him. Brendan, you're right. I'm just going to pin him so everybody can see.
Totally. Do it.
All right. All right, Craig. So before, Craig, I get you to speak. Guys, this is Craig Wright. If you haven't heard the name before, he is the proclaimed creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto. Okay? This isn't known knowledge because I guess human beings like stories. The story behind Satoshi Nakamoto is a lot more powerful than this man right here, who a lot of people seem to hate. Okay? But regardless of whether they hate him or not, he's doing he's helped to do a lot of amazing things in terms of building foundations for the future of Bitcoin. Okay, so Craig, say hello.
Hello, thank you. I mean, it's a interesting introduction. Anyway, but glad to have you all here. Glad you're learning about what Bitcoin's meant to be, which isn't meant to be anarchist. It doesn't take down governments. It doesn't destroy the world. It doesn't burn anything. It's designed to be money. It's designed to be a ledger. It's designed to be an honest system, and it's designed to allow people to interact and trade and build and create. So that's where people go wrong. There's lots of people out there who think that Bitcoin's about killing governments. It's not. It's not about enabling drug sales or corruption or money laundering. None of that works with Bitcoin. So for that reason, a lot of people don't like me.
So Craig, I'm just on the side here. So if you don't see me, it's because, yeah, and you just hear my voice, I'm just on the side. So guys, just some context as well. What Craig is talking about is that he's dealt with a lot of the things that he just mentioned in terms of how Bitcoin was birthed and sort of the path that it went down. So a lot of the stories were around, you know, Bitcoin is about bringing down the governments, bringing down the banks. It wasn't designed to be that way. And because Craig also was hoping that he believed in humanity, hoping that they would get it, unfortunately they didn't get it. So that's why he then kind of returned and has been helping to bring it back to where it was supposed to be originally. But with that, Craig, I'm going to get Brendan Lee is also on the line. So I'm going to get him to ask you a few questions, and then we'll hand it over to the audience.
All right. Hi, Craig. Great to have you on tonight, and thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
So good to see you.
Yeah, no worries. I tried to come up with a couple of questions maybe that you hadn't heard before, but I haven't heard the last couple of days of interviews, so it's possible that they have come up. But one of the things that you've been talking about a bit lately is the velocity of money and how Bitcoin is a much faster moving money than we've ever really had before. And, you know, in that you can send Bitcoin in any quantity to a person who is anywhere in the world within, you know, seconds. And I wanted to ask, you know, there's a lot of hype out there about, oh, Bitcoin's going to go to millions of dollars and it's going to become this huge thing. But, you know, there's really a few things that work absolutely against that, in that with tokenization, we're actually going to see other forms of money and also even other forms of money that you might consider cash, like fiat currencies that are going to use the Bitcoin network and potentially compete with the actual Bitcoin unit of account for status as, you know, the tradable asset that we use every day. And that velocity, that speed at which it moves, is actually going to mean that we actually need less of it. And so I was hoping to just get your thoughts on that.
Correct. People don't for block times too small, but 10 minutes isn't how long it takes to confirm. You can confirm in under 2 seconds. Confirmations can be done quicker than Visa, or even checking a note to make sure it's real and holding it up and making sure the letters are there and all that stuff. Bitcoin's faster than all of that. Now, at the same time, 10 minutes for settlement is incredibly fast. Even when you're talking cash, the shop gets the money in the till. At the end of the week, they deposit it into a bank. The head office gets to distribute it after that, and it goes back out. And I mean, even with cash, you're talking about two-week to 1 month cycles.
Yep.
With credit cards, it's 60 to 90 days. With other things, I mean, it's never less than a day for anything you're talking about. Bitcoin, on the other hand, can be confirmed basically in a single transaction, and if it's a large amount, you wait for 6 transactions. By law, for large value transactions such as buying a house or something like that, most countries have cooling off periods. If you're buying a car, there's a cooling off period. So the reality is Bitcoin clears way faster than you would have to give the money back if you decided, no, I don't want to go through with this contract. So,
Sure. And so do you think that, so, I mean, there's been a few times where people have sort of started talking about, oh, well, eventually we're going to need to, split the unit of Satoshi down even further, make it so that there's more for Bitcoin.
I mean, even then, I mean, this concept that Bitcoin will be worth $100 million of Bitcoin is just asinine. There's not enough cash on Earth. Money isn't wealth.
No,
I know it's a hard concept for a lot of people, but money's not wealth. The having a pair of scissors, if you're a hairdresser, is wealth. Having this monitor here that I'm talking on is wealth. Capital is wealth. Wealth is things, services, food, things that make us actually have a life we want to live. That's wealth. The house we're living in, that's part of our wealth. These things that we want to have a good life is what defines wealth. So the amount of capital and consumer goods created in a society dictates the amount of wealth. So if we all stopped doing anything other than producing money, we would have a lot more money, but we would have no wealth in society. It's the odd thing, like, I forget the name of it, there's a number, but there's a asteroid up there that is practically, it's like 90% gold.
Mm-hmm.
And more gold in this one asteroid than all of the gold on Earth. Now, if someone actually towed that to Earth in the future and brought it down, all it would do is make the value of gold go down. No one would be wealthier. Because, yes, the industrial use of gold would increase. You would see a lot more things created using gold. But overall, the amount of wealth hasn't really changed a lot.
So Craig, we've got, I think half the room, I'd say are beginners here as well, right? And so their first exposure to you. So, obviously right now what you guys are talking about may go over their heads. Maybe let's talk as well a little bit about like the original vision for Bitcoin, right? For the average person, like what is it that people are, have gotten wrong? And what was the original vision for Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin is sort of a cryptocurrency in a long string of cryptocurrencies. Not that I necessarily like that word, but going back to DigiCash and eCash and things like that, developed by Schaum and promoted in the 90s. There have been many different versions of this. There have been Mondex have had smart cards and CHG, and digital cash has formed many iterations over the years, from eGold to Liberty Reserve, etc. Now, everyone looks at this decentralized idea and says, Bitcoin's decentralized. Bitcoin's not the only decentralized cryptocurrency. And that's not what makes it strong. That's where people go wrong. Liberty Reserve was hundreds of times more distributed, decentralized than Bitcoin will ever hope to be in its history.
And what year was that, Craig, for those people who don't know about Liberty Reserve?
It was taken down in 2013.
Yeah. And they had a much larger network, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It had tens of thousands of people operating as money transferers, etc. Now, the problem with all of these has been illegitimate usage. Usage for terrorism funding, usage for drugs, usage for basically money laundering. All the things that are anti-government, designed to bring down the system, that sort of stuff. Bitcoin wasn't. Bitcoin has an immutable evidence trail for a reason. it makes it difficult to use and get away with if you're going to use it for Silk Road or things like that. So the reason Bitcoin was designed the way it was is so that it would be a system that works very well for honest private money, but very badly for everything else. Very badly if you want to make it into a drugstore. Very badly if you want to use it for laundering money, for funding terror, etc. Because people don't understand. Taking down something in a single government, well, something that's illegal in one country but not another, Bitcoin's robust against that. But where it's something like terrorism funding, Liberty Reserve, the takedown involved 42 countries. To actually take down Bitcoin right at the moment would involve 3 countries. So it would actually be very simple to take down Bitcoin globally with a simple order from a court, which could be enforced in China, could be enforced in Europe, could be enforced in Americas. And the way to do that and make it happen would be to start promoting Bitcoin for terrorism, for other things like this. As soon as you do that, governments are going to react. So the worst, stupidest thing, and part of why I disappeared from the scene at the time, was back in 2010, people started as the first business, not even a pot store or something mild. They started selling heroin and fentanyl and weapons and all that stuff using Bitcoin, which was the stupidest thing to ever think about doing. So every single cryptocurrency that's ever gone down that path has been stopped. This idea that you can't stop Bitcoin is just wrong, because miners always form, the way Bitcoin's designed, into large data centers, server farms. I've been saying this since 2008. It's the only way that it works. And people investing hundreds of millions of dollars aren't going to want to have systems that are designed in a way that allows them to lose their investment.
So what's the warning as well? Because obviously we've been preparing for some things, but like the average person, you know, that's just getting into this now, what should they be aware of coming into 2020?
Well, you shouldn't be looking at it as a speculative asset. It should be about use. And like anything you might want to invest in, you should be looking at, is there uses? Are people actually building something on it? Not promises that something's going to go up because it will go up. That's called a Ponzi. So to be valuable, something has to be used. So if Bitcoin wants to be valuable over time, we're going to have to find ways of implementing usage, using file store, using ledgers, recording information about tax events, all of that stuff in a ledger that doesn't change.
Yeah, I would just say on that, if any of you in the audience there are actually wondering which of these currencies is going to have any value and which where you should be applying your efforts, if you have questions about more than one of them, go out and buy a very small quantity of each, like, you know, $2 or $3 worth, and then see what you can do with it. And I think you'll very quickly realize that with Bitcoin SV, we're now getting to the point where we have so many really actually quite useful and fun services that you can use with Bitcoin, which are, you know, extremely simple to use, very cheap to use, and which make extremely great use of the ledger. It'll be very quickly apparent, you know, where the real effort and development is happening. So.
Yep. I might just pull in some questions from the audience, and then we'll weave in between us. All right, guys. We might have gone in head first, but yeah, just introduce yourself and then ask a question.
Hi there, guys. I'm Stefan. I'm going to move a little closer so you can hear me, because you probably might not be able to. I've got a question related to the peer-to-peer nature of SPV. So a little bit more of a technical question. I know that there was an original client in Bitcoin, which was way before my getting involved, and I guess it was removed before I got to see it. So I've heard of this client. I've heard of the fact that you were able to do IP-to-IP transactions with it. but there are a few gaps in my understanding of how it actually worked. For example, how did you do peer discovery? Was it a proper peer-to-peer network, or was it just basically you had to know the guy and then send him an email with your IP address? How did it work?
You're missing the whole point of peer. Peer is an individual. It's stop thinking about Kadzella and eDonkey and whatever else. You're not trying to send to the whole network. Peer-to-peer means peer to peer. That's simple. So if you want to send peer-to-peer, then you have to basically send to a peer. People to people. You don't send out to the whole internet to exchange when you're paying for a coffee. When someone pays you money, they don't send out to the rest of the internet to pay you. Peer-to-peer means I talk to you directly.
Right. So I guess the reason why I asked this question is because if, for example, with Paymail, with Paymail, it gives us an opportunity, or rather a means, to easily identify somebody that might not be in close geographic proximity to us, in order for us to be able to do that peer-to-peer interchange.
Yes.
And is the Paymail kind of means of doing this sort of the general direction we need to be going with this?
It's one of hundreds. That's something other people are inventing. I'm just doing technologies to allow the underlying sort of structure. So it should be anything people want to do. If I want to send to your domain name, your email, your web address, there should be ways of actually linking all of that. DKIP and things like that in mail would enable certificate discovery. DNS with encrypted DNS would enable key discovery. PKI. There are many ways of doing this. So Paymail is one of them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions, guys? Yep. Just come close. Yep. Just introduce yourself and then ask a question.
Hi, Craig. I'm CN. Can you help me imagine the future when we are using the MetaNet? So today, in today's world, we are using things like Uber and Grab for our day-to-day transportation and food ordering.
No, I can hardly hear you.
Yeah, in today's world, we are using things like Uber and Grab for transportation and food ordering. What would be a future? What would the future look like when we have the MetaNet?
So I was asking, what would the future look like with MetaNet in your eyes?
You'll have more companies doing all sorts of different things. So the difficulty of things like Uber and whatever else at the moment is getting access to the ability to be a payment facility and actually put all those things in place makes it difficult to start your own version of Uber. Having to go out there and take money becomes difficult. So if we can reduce the friction, make it simpler for people to set up an app where they can do a delivery, where they can engage with third parties easier and enable more seamless payments, then you're going to, rather than having big conglomerates, you're going to have more smaller or medium-sized businesses that act sort of in a mesh of companies to provide services.
Yeah, just on that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, you know, Uber and these kinds of companies, they spend, you know, tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars on their back-end technologies. And, you know, the serving of data, the tracking of the users as they log into the Uber system. And it requires, you know, all kinds of sort of levels of security and all of this kind of stuff. With Bitcoin, what you're allowed to do is basically not have to focus on any of that because the entire back end is handled by the Bitcoin network, and it allows you to build a really tight front end, and the back end is already there, and you just have to learn how to use it. So, you know, I think we're going to start to see some really exciting stuff happening very quickly. You know, I'm really super impressed with what the guys at Twetch have managed to achieve in a couple of months. And, you know, that's just the beginning. So I think, yeah, we're going to, and especially the ability to create and to take payments with such a simple interface, you know, that's never been available before. You know, I've had to set up a business where I was taking payments, and man, it's a lot of work. And, you know, now with Money Button, you can do it in 6 lines of code on a single web page, and there you're in business. So it's really changing that whole paradigm of how do you receive money as a business. And, you know, it really is as easy as taking cash. So.
And Craig, for those who missed, you know, what is MetaNet in layman's terms?
Basically, it's a commercial internet. So the problem I see with the internet is that it was developed with the typical everything's got to be free mentality, which is the tragedy of the commons. When everything's free, no one takes any responsibility. No one cares. No one fixes the potholes. No one fixes the fact that it's being overgrazed. No one cares about spam. No one cares about the user experience properly. So you end up with a whole lot of walled gardens where you get a Facebook that owns their area, and you get an Uber that owns their area, and no one shares data anymore because there's no value on data. When you can start putting monetary value on things, even if it's small, even if it's 1/10 of a cent or so, then data becomes information. And information is really what moves economics and defines what we're going to see going forward.
So did you guys know that, I think it was last year, data became more valuable than oil? You guys hear about that? Yeah. So this is, everything that's been happening in this Bitcoin world is completely in line with what Craig and many others in this ecosystem have been working on and trying to do. Yeah, for decades as well.
Yeah, so when we're looking at this, you've got to remember that right now, the way of pricing data is by advertising. So when you go to Google, rather than getting a search that actually matters, like you could 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I could exclude things, put page definitions how I wanted it, and I could get actual valuable information out of Google. Now, I get half a page worth of ads. Half the time, nothing to do with what I actually want to search for. I might be searching for a legal case note. Instead, I get references to solicitors and books and things like this, none of which I was looking at.
And Craig, in a Bitcoin world, does the model get reversed? Would folks like Google then have to pay us for our data?
Well, yes, they could pay you, or on top of that, there would be whole search functions where you would pay small amounts of money, and the better search engine would then win by having more directed searches. So if it's more accurate, if it's more likely to give you actually the data you want and find the information you need, then it's more likely to be successful, not the better ad platform.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. You know, I think the thing that people haven't yet seen with Bitcoin is it's truly the capability to build an entire business on microservices. And Google their business is not built on microservices. It's built on micro productization of people. So they're selling a single advertiser access to 100,000 people searching for a particular thing. What Bitcoin allows you to do is take those 100,000 people and monetize the service that you're providing to them. And the advertiser can piss off, like, we don't care about them anymore, because it's actually the people who are who are using the search engine who are going to pay 1/10 of a cent each for that search. So really, you can now build a $100 million company on the back of 100 billion service events. And that's the really exciting thing, which, you know, which we haven't been able to do before. With the legacy money system, you simply can't manage 100 billion transactions. It's not cost feasible. So, but with Bitcoin, it is.
Fraction anyway. If you look at things like PayPal, they have a base rate of 5 cents plus a percentage of everything that goes through. And when you start looking at that, if your base rate is 5 cents, you're never going to have a half-cent transaction.
Hi, Craig. I'm Karen here. I'm just wondering why is it necessary, right? I'm sure a lot of people ask you, but I want to hear from you. Why is it necessary for you to come out and say that you are Satoshi Nakamoto right now? And what changes does it help in, by bringing...
It wasn't my choice. In 2015, I didn't choose to come out and say I'm Satoshi, contrary to what people say. A bunch of journalists and other things decided that it's in everyone's interest to do this. And then a bunch of other people started saying a whole lot of lies to shoot me down. What you will find is practically everyone who's against me has some link to Silk Road or drug markets or whatever else. There's a lot of money going through Bitcoin at the moment. There's a lot of money being laundered. There's a lot of money coming from Eastern European and Russian oligarchs who are moving back into Europe to get their money into Britain. There is a lot of money being moved for all sorts of illegitimate reasons. And all of these people don't want me to succeed. So there's a lot of hate for that, because whenever you get a lot of money, especially when it's from criminal sources, etc., you very quickly find a lot of people sort of realize that their income, their sort of whole basis for earning money is on a precarious footing. So,
but the same group of people can actually, if they want to, they can always take the same money that they have and use it on the SV, and it's the same. Would it have the same problem? I mean, what difference? I know there's a different block size. And
well, no, they can't. I mean, the whole point is they're not really able to do what they want to do at scale. Silk Road, people are still going to jail. Just the other week, one of the original 2013 people has been traced down and now put into jail in America. So they are still arresting people. So a lot of where people wanted to go after the takedown of Silk Road has been development. There's a lot of money out there that people are trying to hide. And to do that, that's where you'll see the development like SegWit and Lightning are trying to move into different fields. Lightning enables Bitcoin Core to lose records and logs. So rather than having an immutable trail, you can start moving all of that Bitcoin to basically an exchange without having a record of where it came from, which means you can anonymize the source. You can start losing the fact that it came from a drug deal. You can start losing the fact that it came from an arms deal. That's what a lot of people are trying to really work on at the moment. They're trying to make it so that you can anonymize these things.
Yep, thank you very much. Craig, do you want to touch on, because you talked about scale, right? Like, because that question that has popped up for people, like, you know, what's different about SV from the scale factor, and probably, right, the block size bit, because we just upgraded to 2 gig. A lot of people don't even know about like BTC and the limit there. So maybe you might just want to touch on that.
Well, what people don't understand is there was never meant to be a block cap. The original version of Bitcoin didn't have one. That was added as a temporary feature that was meant to be removed after time. Because in 2009, there was no value to Bitcoin. Even by mid-2010, the value of Bitcoin fluctuated between 8 cents and 12 cents per Bitcoin. Now, the reality there was you can't really have an economic system with no real value. So until we had value, it was a whole lot of people who were hoping on a promise of the future. And that really led to a scenario where people could game the system, cause problems, etc. So it was a temporary measure until we had some economic value. And it was only meant to be there until there was value. But then there's the other side of things. Right back from 2008, when I had arguments with people on the core side of things who wanted a different system, who wanted a system that is anti-government and allows drug sales and whatever else, then they argued that everyone has to run a node. Right back from my arguments with James Donald in 2008, I've been saying Bitcoin scales into professional data centers, into server farms. But they don't want that. they have a vision of sort of an anarchist world where everyone's going to have their own money and their own coin, which unfortunately for them, Bitcoin can't do.
Yep. Okay.
So what is the vision for Bitcoin as we how would you determine success for this for Bitcoin as we what do you
That's
see?
just Bitcoin. I mean, it's just Bitcoin. So it's the original vision for Bitcoin. It is an honest money, a system that enables peer-to-peer cash, that enables records, that enables transactions between people doing honest business, that enables records to be kept, that enables normal everyday people to transact. It is a system that is not friendly for illicit uses, but is extremely good, extremely fast, extremely cheap, and is good when people actually want to do real business, when people want to earn money at a restaurant, when people want to create some sort of online store. All of that it works well for.
But fundamentally, right, the idea of a decentralized currency like Bitcoin, it is kind of.
But who said it was a decentralized currency like Bitcoin? It's a distributed database. It's not meant to be. I've never said that every single person on Earth can run it. I'll give you a thought experiment. If we have 1 second blocks, which would be silly, and 4 billion people are running the node, the average discovery time per person of a block will be about 800 to 1,000 years, which means you never expect to ever earn anything. You never expect ever to make money as a miner. So why would you do it? So you can't distribute the system globally. It doesn't work that way. What you can do is enable a peer-to-peer network where you and I, for instance, can trade. Bitcoin solves the double spend problem. And rather than having a central bank, rather than having a single entity that can change the money supply, we now have a distributed ledger that works across countries with businesses competing. And that's the thing people don't understand. It's not about people running nodes. It's about competition between businesses. And that sort of sense of greed of a business wanting to find an orphan block from the other business so that they can get a heads up and win is important. Because if you get 10 companies all competing, all trying to make a slight profit advantage over their competitors, they're going to do everything to make sure that every one of their competitors follows the rules, because if their competitors go outside the rules at all, they'll crush them. So that nature of miners basically being able to force honesty on their competitors is really how Bitcoin works.
But would SV have the same challenge of government trying to?
No.
So you remember, Craig, we're in Singapore.
Anytime.
Yeah.
No?
Government can just stop Bitcoin tomorrow. Government, Liberty Reserve was shut down across 42 countries. Bitcoin can be like that, tomorrow banned. The way that they shut Liberty Reserve down was the Americans issued a financial services order. Anyone who took Liberty Reserve was banned from the banking system anywhere on Earth. Anyone who took money from someone who took money was banned. It was 3 deep. So if you received money from someone who received money from someone who received money using Liberty Reserve, you are forever banned from using any banking. You will never own a credit card again. You will never have banking again. Basically, it means your whole company is wiped off the face of the earth. And they could do that, and they can do that to Bitcoin right now. And if they do that, it won't exist. If people can't get money in and out of other systems, it won't exist. The only way Bitcoin can survive is if it embraces honest money, if it embraces working within the law, if it doesn't sit there going, we're going to attack government. if you do that, it becomes a system that is too big, that is too powerful. It allows everyone to trade globally. Then it's hard to take and stop. But you don't make it a drug currency and think that you're going to fight government.
I think the other thing too, right, which Craig and you know, Singapore, right, like you've spoken before, that Bitcoin will help a lot of people in the unbanked, right, parts of the world. Why is it more useful for them? And say, like, because, you know, in a place like Singapore, things are pretty efficient, right? So I think a lot of people, the uptake isn't as strong, but in other countries that you talk about a lot, why is it more important there?
Well, in other countries, banking can be expensive. But if we take this back to Singapore, it opens up markets for you. So right next door to Singapore, and I go there a fair bit because my wife's Singaporean, you have Malaysia and you have other parts of Asia that could be opened up for trade. So right now, the sort of movement of money and remittance from Singapore to Malaysia is expensive and slow. Selling goods from Singapore into Malaysia would be simpler. If you can have all the government bills of lading and compliance records all automated, it will be faster and cheaper. If you can start having shipping records automated, it will be easier, faster, and quicker. And one of the things, I'm a bit weird in that one of the things I always love about Singapore is when you come into the harbour, it's full of ships. Singapore is one of these cities that the harbour is just full of freight ships, trade ships, etc. They're everywhere. And I know some people say that's terrible and whatever else. I love it because it's people trading globally. And if you think about every one of those ships sitting out there waiting to be given a piece of paper by someone or having something signed off, imagine saving an hour. Every ship coming in, having a little bit of time shaved off how long they're in port. It will make things less expensive. It will increase the amount of trade through Singapore. It will open up more sales, and it will make everyone, the government, the people, everyone will be richer just because the volume of trade increases. That's the sort of thing I want to see.
Cool. Any questions from the back? Guys, okay? Is it okay? Like you're understanding most of it? Okay. Even if you don't, that's okay. Brandon, do you have any questions?
I did have one more question, and it's more about the process of I guess learning, and I guess for me and for most people who've been doing Bitcoin or been in Bitcoin for a while, you know, it's been one of like probably the most fantastic learning experiences that you can probably get. I wanted to ask you, Craig, are you still learning things about Bitcoin? Do you still discover new things that are possible and almost surprise yourself? Or is it more that you're now sort of encompassing more about the whole world and what you can do around Bitcoin?
Probably more of the latter. But then it's a big wide world out there, and figuring out how many business opportunities, how many possible entrepreneurial activities, how many problems can be solved. That's more than I'm going to do in my life.
It's pretty amazing. Every time I go outside, I'm almost struck by, wow, you could just make this so much easier with Bitcoin, and it's everywhere. So
yeah, I mean, and the ability to actually pay people small amounts for doing individual tasks, it just changes how we think of things. So Uptime SV and paying lots of people around the globe to check websites, that's one thing. But what about individual things like jobs and things like that? I want to have these things done around my house. This is what I'll pay. And people figure out how to make money that way. How do I maintain this street? How do I fix a pothole? Imagine rather than having to file something with the government, and I know Singapore's pretty good this way, but they're not here in Britain. But in the UK, I mean, having a little app where I could put down that I've got a pothole and someone comes and quickly fixes it, and the street pays for it and everyone's happy would be great.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so many opportunities, and yeah, like we were talking about before, the ability to build a business on the back of a small but useful service that only costs a couple of cents or even fractions of cents is now possible. I'm just really looking forward to, and, you know, even things like going to the doctor, you know, here in Australia, you've got Medicare and insurance, and it all takes days, and being able now to just have a wallet that can reach out to your insurance oracle and say, yes, this person has cover, and pay the doctor straight away, that it's just going to speed up so many aspects of how we do business. And yeah, I guess that was my question, but yeah, thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, Fred. Got another question?
I've got one final question for you, Craig.
Yeah.
How can we learn more about Bitcoin? What is a good way to learn more about Bitcoin?
Well, start looking at what we're doing. Jimmy and the Bitcoin Association, the guys at CoinGeek, there are people who are actually trying to say what Bitcoin's really about out there. So not only with sort of exercises like today where people are trying to go out and teach, but look at media that's actually trying to teach you that Bitcoin's about building a better world, not that it will help you buy drugs. I mean, and that's the thing. We've spent all these years with people running around going, Bitcoin will take down the banks, Bitcoin will take down government, Bitcoin will destroy whatever. Bitcoin doesn't destroy, Bitcoin builds. And if you use it, it gives you an opportunity to build.
Hey, Craig, I've noticed there's a couple of digital banks coming on board and also e-wallets. How do you see that fitting into the whole ecosystem in terms of payments, you know, the fluidity?
Well, banks are different than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is cash and money.
Digital banks.
Sorry?
Digital banks, as in...
But they're still different. A bank is going to hold and distribute money. So what people don't get is Bitcoin isn't a threat to banks. Banks are in a different model to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is about cash transactions, and banks will have to then compete to get your money. Right now, it becomes easy for banks to pay you nothing and not have to give you good service. Why? Because, well, everyone has to put their money somewhere, and cash you don't want to use because it's too difficult. They're making it more difficult. So what happens when you have digital cash? Then banks have to move to a model that actually gives you customer service again, where they want to have you as a customer. Because the model of a bank isn't about holding your money. It's about lending your money out to other people. So Bitcoin doesn't lend your money out to other people.
I mean,
Banks have to encourage you to put your money and store it with them.
Gotcha, because in Philippines, they just launched their own coin. So banks are doing their own coin. So how does that work? And can you transact or, do you know what I'm saying?
What's going to be the issue there?
The issue,
Yeah.
Philippines
Nothing really. It's still a classic bank model, and not as efficient, won't scale as much. So go for it. I don't care. Different.
different. Okay.
You'll notice Craig is very confident.
Yeah.
And that's also what really pisses people off. Yes.
One of the things about banks is that they offer other services. So things like custodial storage and insurance. And I mean, I like many other Bitcoin holders, I have a reasonable amount of my I guess wealth in a Bitcoin wallet that I keep here in my house, and that's actually not comfortable. You know, I can't wait for the day when I can take those Bitcoins and I can give them to a bank and say, here, look after this for me with insurance, with security, with proper measures, can't my house, and take that burden off. And, you know, I think people are going to need that. You know, it's not, they don't want to be their own bank. That's the story they're sold. Be your own bank. Well, I don't want to be my own bank. I want the bank to be the bank. I just want to be me. I think that's a big thing that's kind of come out of the narrative, which is a bit wrong. So I'm looking forward to the day that, you know, we do get banks coming in and enabling Bitcoin services and enabling us to, and it's also about, you know, allowing them to do more with our Bitcoin, because they will be able to do more. They have more connections. They have a bigger network than just me, and they can actually take my money and put it to use with other people. And so, you know, there's a big opportunity there for, you know, it's not about taking down financial institutions, not about taking the banks down. It's about allowing them to grow and to change. And that's, I think, the biggest thing about Bitcoin is that it allows everything to change and start to move more quickly and be really very honest. So,
Craig, I remember in the early days, there was talk about Bitcoin in terms of its actual competition being folks like Visa and MasterCard. Is that still the case or completely different?
I don't see Visa and MasterCard as competition. I mean, when you're paying 3% fees and your clearing times are horrible, the security's horrible, fraud levels immense. No, Visa aren't competition at all.
Okay. So how long do you think until
Visa could move to using Bitcoin as a ledger and it would make them more secure?
One final thing as well is I think we spoke about some people worry that, like, oh, what happens to people's national currencies, right, in a Bitcoin world? Do they disappear, or what happens to them?
That's up to governments. I don't really care. If people want to have US dollars and whatever else, they can have US dollars. Money is just a means of distributing information within an economy. And if you want to compete with a fixed measurement with your variable play for political reasons measurement stick, then go for it.
yeah, I think.
Brendan?
Oh, I was just going to say, I actually think they're going to probably end up tokenizing any of those currencies on Bitcoin, because it's going to be the cheapest way of doing it. And it's going to give their money the same property as Bitcoin transactions. And people are going to be using these currencies and going, well, I can just use Bitcoin and it's instant and it's extremely secure. And you know, I'm using this fiat currency and it's neither of those things. And what are you going to do about it? And well, if they tokenize it on Bitcoin, well, they can give that fiat currency the same properties as Bitcoin, but then they're using Bitcoin anyway. So,
all right. I guess to wrap up, Craig, what's one piece of advice you'd leave for everybody here as we move in to a potential future Bitcoin world? Not potential, a future Bitcoin world.
Build, create, find a problem, solve it. I mean, the reality is too many people walk around saying this is a problem and why is no one fixing it? Well, instead of that, see it as an opportunity. If there's a problem that other people see, then there's an opportunity, and that's how entrepreneurial activity starts.
Oh, we got a question. One last one. Sorry, from the back.
Okay.
Hi, Greg. My name's Lars, and I'm just wondering, what do you think about Facebook's new cryptocurrency Libra? Other than the fact that
failed attempt number 3.
Right? Yeah. Other than the fact that people are leaving Facebook as well, so like that would drive down the value of that. But also, how does that compete to Bitcoin? And also, what are other pitfalls of why it's not going to work out?
Because it's failed attempt number 3. It's technically a load of BS. It's just a thing that Facebook likes to wave around to say that they're doing something. This is literally the failed attempt number 3, and it is even stupider than the last 2 attempts. That's the only way to put it.
What was the first two?
Yeah, what were the first 2 for those who aren't aware?
Facebook tried to bring out Facebook credit in 2008. In about 2012, they tried another Facebook token. Both of them crashed and burnt. And this time what they're doing is saying, we've got other people who issue with us, where they still keep control and all the rest. And that is going to crash and burn. They've made it less efficient than their last 2 times. And still, the reason they failed was the fact that they're not offering any real value. They're not offering anything that people want. They're still fighting government on things that they won't get through. Every problem that was there and why they failed the first 2 times, they've increased. Everything that actually worked, they've taken away. So,
and you said it's technically not even a blockchain, right?
No, it's not even a blockchain.
Cool. That was a good final question. Okay, can we please give a round of applause for Craig and Brendan? And Craig, I know you've been on a wild run today with live streaming into a few different shows, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a Friday that way. Yep.
All right, man. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks always for your time, Craig. And we will speak again soon.
Okay.
All right. See you, Craig.
Hey, guys. Bye.
Brendan, you're more than welcome to stay on. We're just gonna, I guess, start chatting with each other, networking. I'll put some music on.
Happy to hang around. Maybe for another 15, 20 minutes or so, and then I might head to bed.
Yep.
Australian time.
Yeah. So he's based in Brisbane at the moment. Okay, cool. I'll put some music on, and if anybody wants to come talk to Brendan, he'll just be chilling here by himself. I'm kidding. Brendan, thanks as well for coming on. I'll put the jams on, and then...
no worries, man.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys, for coming out. Yes. Oh, yes. So if you do want any wine or beer, it's $5. Yeah. $5. So yeah, just give the $5 to Faiā. I'd love to see you.
No, not yet. I think you do that.
This is the highly contested, right? Like,
How did you get hold of it?
so I knew him from, we were both students. Yeah, there's a documentary way back. She read it about there's some strange reason I haven't been since. That's where I first heard about it. And then,
It's basically.
he didn't run it out. He wasn't
Sydney.
Yeah.
Not Japan.
Hey, no, thank you very much.
So you guys do this as a
We'll do it on a monthly basis. Yeah. So.
Hey there.
Stefan, right?
Hang on. I'm going to try and turn the music down so I can actually.
Sure.
I won't be able to hear you then. How do I turn the music volume down? Okay. Here we go. So hopefully now I can hear you. All right. So you joined Faiā, I guess. Now I need to turn this volume up. So many volumes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me at all when I'm talking, or is it just?
I don't know if this is going to be. Hang on. Let me see. What are we working with here?
George has some headphones.
How do I get headphones on?
Oh, I don't know how to do headphones.
I've got headphones.
Yeah, just plug it in.
Where do headphones go?
Just put them on the side here.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
January 2020.
Hey, Brendan. Brendan, you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, my name's Zach. I popped in right at the end. I had a question. So you guys were talking about filling potholes in Britain using Bitcoin. My question to you is, why does it need to be done via Bitcoin? Could that not be done via, somebody builds an app that's built on blockchain? Say, the English government builds the app that, why Bitcoin as opposed to some other third party?
Well, I guess with Bitcoin, you're building it on the public ledger, and you're using Bitcoin not just to actually build the app itself and to advertise the fact that the pothole needs to be fixed, but you're also using Bitcoin to pay for the person who comes and fixes the pothole to actually fix it. So you literally put an ad on the Bitcoin ledger that says, hey, I'll pay you X amount of Bitcoin to come here and fix the pothole. And someone comes and fixes the pothole, it provides you the proof. And so, the problem with using other blockchains is that you're not really getting any advantage of a public blockchain. There's a huge advantage using a public blockchain that everybody is all looking at the same data structure. With these private blockchains that we're seeing, where you get a blockchain for this and a blockchain for that and a blockchain for that and a blockchain for that, it's really no different to what we have today with all of these different SQL databases all around the place. And the real advantage of using the public ledger is because we're all looking at the public ledger, we don't need to verify that we're looking at the right thing. We can already see that the blocks are the blocks from Bitcoin. They have the right proof of work, they have the right transactions in them, and so we don't need to worry about any security. And because all of our communication with the Bitcoin network is actually in plain text, we actually get rid of the requirement to have any kind of internet security at all. And all kinds of public computer terminals, like check-in at airports, all of this kind of stuff, they just become really flat systems that have a bit of a user interface on top, and they just talk to the blockchain, and they'll just talk to the ledger and through the network, and it becomes far easier to manage as a system. Yeah, we're a long way from that, but it's coming very quickly. So I think that's the main reason why build the pothole system on Bitcoin is because it's easy.
No, I think I agree with you there, but I guess my thought is does it need to be built on a public network or maybe something that's a little bit more regional?
The thing about using the public ledger is you can still make it regional. So I can communicate with just you, right? And nobody else can see what we're doing, but we're talking via the public ledger on the public network. I can put an ad out that says, oh, there's a pothole at this GPS location. And anybody using Pothole app can say, oh, show me all of the potholes that are within 10 miles of where I am. And it'll just say, well, here are the potholes. But then they can go to a completely different city and say, oh, well, I've got my pothole fixing gear. Show me some potholes. Oh, there's one right outside your hotel. We'll go and fix it and get paid. So you can be global and regional and private all at the same time. And if you isolate yourself and you isolate a regional area into its own blockchain, you cut them off from the rest of the world. And that's the real tragedy that would happen if people could go that way. It's that you would end up with these completely self-contained economies that had no means of trading outside of themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. That's my question for you. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, it's called a hash wall, right? Minus.
Sorry.
You had a question there, Stefan?
Yes. Can you hear me on this?
Oh yeah, I can hear you really well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to maybe ask a little bit more of a technical question related to SPV. I think that one of the areas that my technical understanding is kind of lacking in the moment, that I feel might need some clarification, is if around payment channels specifically, and how payment channels are meant to work. If it's just a peer-to-peer interaction between me and another person, let's say we've already done peer discovery. I've already I've opened up a payment channel. In other words, I know your public, your ex-pub, you know my ex-pub. We can start communicating with each other, bouncing this transaction back and forth. Presumably, the person who initiates the transaction or the person who's got the UTXO from which the original spend has to happen, what is there? Is it basically a matter of trust between the two of us that I'm not going to move that money in the middle of our peer interchange as the money goes back and forth in the channel? Because presumably this peer-to-peer interchange doesn't have to be happening in real time, right? I mean, if it could be a store and forward kind of service where I send you the transaction to a store and forward service, but it's off chain in this channel.
Sure. Well, there's a few ways that can be handled. So what you can actually do is before you go into the transaction process, you can actually lock the funds into a time-locked transaction that has a multi-signature element, so that either you both have to agree to release the funds in a particular way. So you get to the end of whatever your payment channel was doing, and you both agree, yes, we've done our business, or it has to wait a certain amount of time and you can retrieve the money. This is something that I'm actually just learning myself, or just really getting on top of, is that there will actually be mempools into which you will be able to put transactions that are in payment channels, and you'll be able to update those transactions with the miners in their mempool. And if you then try to double spend one of those that was already in that mempool that's being used as the payment channel, the miner would actually reject that other transaction. I believe those are the ways of doing it. So if it's directly peer-to-peer, you're not going via a miner, and there is like an element, like you don't trust that I'm not going to double spend that out from underneath you, well then you would do that lock with multi-signature, and then at any point during that channel agreement, you decide, actually I don't want to do this anymore, you can just send that transaction to the network and close it out. Or if we never get to a point where we both agree, I can just wait and withdraw my money.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That was the missing piece. The multi-sig piece was what I was missing. For some reason, it didn't click. Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries. It just means that you have to do another transaction first. But I mean, it's like half a second. You do the transaction and then straight away you can open the channel.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is something that I'm really only just learning myself. I'm working with some really great teams. So what I didn't say before is I'm actually also the training and development manager for the Bitcoin Association. So I'm actually learning how to train people about payment channels. So stay in touch, and when I get more information, I can send that through to you and make sure that you get that latest information. So
that'll be fantastic. I'm in touch with George here, and I believe that you're working with him. So I'll pass my contact details on to him. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Is that so? I'm not working with him, but I'm in contact with him over here in Singapore. And he mentioned, yeah, with George. And he mentioned that that you've kind of, I believe you've joined Faiā as Faiā Corp, right? Yeah. So are you coming to Singapore soon?
I have no plans to come there on any kind of permanent basis, but maybe I'll be over there at some point.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, but I'll pass my details through to him. I don't think it's gonna work, me shouting out my email over this call.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, just tell George to give you my email.
Yeah.
And you can just email me directly. I'm happy to do it that way.
I'm trying to. So the weird thing is, I've built this Bitcoin library. I understand a lot of the the underlying machinations of how the protocol fits together, like the underpinnings of it, is beautiful, elegant, and in places scary, but it works beautifully. There is this second order of complexity around how do you do these interesting things with the scripting language that there's just so much to learn.
Yeah. I'm teaching myself, like literally today, before I came into this meeting, I'm writing Bitcoin script to, I have it open right here on my desktop. I'm writing Bitcoin script to sign a multi-signature check using the opcode check multi-sig. Normally you have to put the public keys into the output and put it on the blockchain, but people don't like to put the public keys. They like to put a public key hash.
Yeah.
I'm writing a script that can put public key hashes into that output, and then when you want to spend it, you give it the signatures and a bunch of public keys, and it checks all the public keys against the public key hashes that you gave it when you first put it on the blockchain, and then does the check multi-sig. So yeah, I'm playing around with this stuff all the time because this is useful. This is very useful for payment channels, you know. So
Right. So is that working over P2SH? Because I deliberately didn't implement P2SH in my library.
Don't bother. Look, this doesn't work now because it's still considered a non-standard transaction.
Right.
But I believe that one of the next upgrades.
Right.
I believe that the next upgrade of the, you know, which will be, I guess, early next year, will take care of that and mean that you can basically send any kind of transaction that you want.
Yeah. That's.
And so when that can happen, you know, really the sky's the limit. You can say, well, if I want to spend it, or he wants to spend it, or 2 out of those 3 guys want to spend it, well, then it can be spent. Or I have to approve that either he or any 2 of those 3 guys, or whatever, you know, there's all kinds of different combinations that you can come up with. And part of it will then be building a wallet that can take these weird transactions and actually evaluate the script. And starting from the end of the script, actually go back through the inputs and say, oh, well, actually, I need this signature or that signature. And even embedding some text in the transaction that it can display to the person who's trying to sign it that says, oh, well, I need Bob's signature, or I need Alice or Charles's signature at this point.
Right.
And so you've got to go and find Bob or Alice and Charles and get them to sign it. And then it says, okay, well, now I need Eddie's signature. Go find Eddie.
So that is actually very interesting that you mentioned that, because that is almost like adding semantic meaning or a natural language processing over the script to be able to give a natural language meaning to interpretation.
Very easy to do, because you can just shove an op return now, because they've now changed the functionality of op return. They can shove an op return in there and actually then put some text behind it, and it doesn't mean the whole script is invalid. It just means that the script returns, you know. So you can fail the script at a certain point and then have the wallet look at the text and say, oh, well, you needed to find Bob. You got to find Bob. You've got to get Bob's signature.
Right. Do you know if that pushes in the latest in the Quasar upgrade, or is that something that's still coming down the line?
So the change in meaning of op return is in the latest Quasar upgrade, but I believe they still have not re-enabled like all different transaction types yet.
Right. So we don't. So it's still just P2SH and pay to public key hash.
Look, I honestly, I just wouldn't even bother while it's P2SH. I would just keep honing skills, and then when P2SH is gone and it's all just whatever with script, blow them away, you know, like really awesome.
No, that's the next thing. I'm sort of halfway through porting the script interpreter into the library. Because that's the big thing that I want to get done, is to have the script interpreter done. And the script interpreter is really only useful if you're going to be doing scripts other than pay to public key hash. Well, I guess for P2SH interpretation it is, but
hash is so shit. Like, you can literally write the friggin' pay script in the bloody C and print out any old friggin' crap. Like, all you have to have is the right hash.
Pretty much. It's amazing how they've. Yeah, the more I learn about how Bitcoin has been crippled and sort of boxed in, that to the point where it's weird though that people are now looking, right. So as a developer coming into to Bitcoin, it starts to make sense why somebody would say, somebody would be able to go, or one of the core developers be able to go, you know what, this bit over here is not useful because it's been disabled, right? So it really isn't useful. So you really can get rid of it, but then you're breaking it's like just tearing it down piece by piece.
One of my jobs at the Bitcoin Association is to go through and clean up the wiki, and like, I just can't believe how much stuff they fucked up. Like, they just destroyed so many parts of the thing. You know, we're so lucky to actually be here still now with real Bitcoin.
Yeah,
we could have ended up with nothing.
Man, it was brutal trying to get clean information on what the protocol standard is supposed to be for implementing this library, because it's the stuff has been so bastardized that you don't know what is the right and proper way anymore. And but anyway, I look forward to chatting with you more in future. I'm going to get off the call now. I think you probably also want to head go turn in. Don't look at script too late into the night.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Stefan. It was really nice to meet you, and thanks for coming tonight. And, look forward to speaking to you more. You sound like you got your head screwed on right, and you're looking at the right things and learning the right things. So, you know, your question about how to learn is learn by doing, and it sounds like that's what you're doing. So, you know, that's how I learned. Is I just got in and I started just doing stuff. And, you know, there's a tremendously supportive community out there. So if you want to know where to go to speak to people, like, I can get you into the Atlantis Slack if you're not already there. You know, there's other Slacks and Telegrams where people are discussing all of these kinds of things.
No, I'm already in Atlantis. I participated in the last hackathon, and I'll probably I'll probably have another go in the next one. And really, the hackathon for me was, I wasn't trying to, well, I'm lying. I was trying to win it, but but it was massive fun. I had a lot more fun hanging out in the Telegram, just chatting to people, and, you know, knowing that you know, you're not the only crazy person out there.
Oh, great, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, no, really good.
Okay, Brendan. I'll say goodbye.
Stefan, it's really great to meet you, and I'm sure we're going to bump into each other again. So,
okay. Yeah. Take care.
No worries, mate.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, maybe.
His background is a cybersecurity. He did government contracts for CIA.
George.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to show these guys Twitch soon as well.
Cool. Oh, yeah, great. Awesome.
Yep. What's up?
I was thinking, well, unless somebody else wants to have a quick chat, that I was probably gonna.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it, man. Because I know it's late. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Great to
say bye.
See you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Always great to talk to Craig, and obviously talk to you. But especially Craig, you know, like, to be with so few people and.
Yep, exactly. All right, my man.
Thanks, man. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.